Hello, my name is Kiriath, and today we're going to have a little chat about this thing, the Ad Mech Archaeopter, and whether it actually fits in with the rest of the Ad Mech range. Now, there's been quite a bit of talk about this because, let's face it, when it comes to weird vehicles, I feel like Ad Mech are right up there in terms of causing a little bit of not confusion. What's the word? Controversy, shall we say? And this is a weird vehicle, but a lot of the things that I've seen in terms of discussion surrounding this is essentially, does it even fit with Ad Mech at all? Similar discussion as to when the Scorpius was unveiled, in fact. And I thought we'd have a quick chat about it, because I think there's like a yes and no situation going on here. I will say as well, this video almost entirely inspired by Macca from the Outer Circle. He's also done a video, so I'll link it in the description. It kind of prompted me to go and see what other people were saying as well, and it's been kind of interesting reading about it. So, as always, this is just my opinion. This is not gospel. This isn't God's own truth. I'm just going to walk you through why actually I don't think it looks that out of place, and why although it is significantly different to a lot of Imperium stuff, I don't think that's necessarily an issue for this particular vehicle. So to start out, the main difference is, of course, this is not a block, it's not a brick. It's not just a rectangle with a couple of corners squished down on treads or with wings, which is the traditional Imperium approach for any and all tanks or vehicles, including dreadnoughts. I might like the Redemptor, I might have converted 7 of them at this point, but they are still pretty much just slightly more angled boxes on legs as opposed to just being straight up boxes on legs like the old dreadnoughts. This is not like that. There is a lot of curve going on with this model. It's not all squares and rectangles. There is actual, I would even use the word subtlety in some areas. Not all of them. I mean, look at it. It's not massively subtle, but the big question is, does it fit? And I think the issue that I have with the argument that it doesn't is that this is a weird faction to begin with. Now, even if we ignore the Scorpius, which we'll ignore for the moment because, for a while it was just the rest of this stuff, there are things in here that don't match other things already. So I've loaded a few up. A good example for me, in terms of the fact that this faction is incredibly, I guess the word is diverse. It does have like unifying themes and unifying design cues, but it's not massively coherent. It's not massively kind of comprehensive. It doesn't all glue together perfectly. It is a strange force because you do have a lot of very different approaches to things. So, an example of this being the main, for a long time, the tank of Ad Mech, which is the Dune Crawler. And you can clearly see it right in front of you. Obviously, you've got that kind of sloped hull. You've got a circular turret off to one side where the gun kind of angles up and down, and you've got the missile launcher. Again, there's more of a rounded approach to that, and it's walking on 4 legs. The 4 legs especially look very complicated. I'm not an engineer. I have no idea whether that sort of approach would work. I'm assuming someone does, but I don't. It's a weird design. But that goes for a lot of Ad Mech stuff. The Ad Mech stuff is weird. It's one of the things that makes them interesting and different from the rest of the Imperium, I feel, rather than it just being a standard thing of, here's a thing on tracks. Instead, you get creations like the Dune Crawler. Now, the Dune Crawler is a tank that is wandering about on 4 legs, okay? It's a particular method of locomotion. It is the only thing in this army that has that particular method of movement. Yes, of course, a lot of the rest of the army is on legs, but they're not on that particular configuration of legs. The heavy infantry, who you might suspect would be on legs, is not. They're on tracks. They are on tracks, and they are significantly more rounded. All of the traditional Imperium angles for them are on the bottom half of the model. And then when you go up, you get these kind of curved segments of armour. You get like a moulded chest plate. You get a curved bit of armour around the neck. The pauldrons, again, are not square. Everything is circular. Everything has a curve to it. It is almost the opposite of that. That has got the legs and no tracks and is a strange mix of kind of circular turret and very angular hull. These guys have got all of the angles down below and everything above is circular. They're also infantry, but they're not because they're on treads, they're not walking. You've got two very different ideas as to how things should work right there in just 2 units. And then when you look at those, you could think to yourself, well, surely, if we're going with the tracked approach, a swift scout vehicle you would think would have some sort of locomotion, like, I don't know, all of the Space Marine bikes. That's a popular approach. Easy, simple, quick to produce. But you don't get that. What you get is the weird chicken walker, which, whilst does have some, similarities and some design cues shared with the Dune Crawler, is a very, very different vehicle again. We've got a totally different configuration for legs. I mean, for a start, there's only 2 of them, but the structure and construction of them isn't really the same in any way. The approach to the top, I mean, it looks like it may well could have been a bike at some point. You've got a pilot / servitor controlling the legs with their legs. It's a very weird design, and whilst it is supposed to be a light, fast, skirmish scout unit, it doesn't actually really look all that similar to that. The approach is again very different from there to there. And the approach is different again from there to there. Already, the faction is kind of disjointed in its approach to how things get around and how things are equipped. And it doesn't get any better. It's not like, okay, well, those are the things that stand out as being remarkably different. Well, then we have the Castellans, which are yet another approach again. Now, of course, obviously, these are things that were unearthed. These are incredibly rare. They're from a better time. However, we're looking at the army as a whole. We're looking at things that you can field as an AdMech player to decide whether this thing fits in with everything else. Now, I would argue it fits in with them absolutely fine. The Castellans already look so different to everything else that the AdMech field that they are the things that look the most out of place. In an army where everything looks slightly different to everything else, and there are different methods for getting around and different methods for mounting weapons from one thing to another, these guys and the Archaeopter actually match pretty well. They have a similar kind of curved approach to their design. They're not just blocky, they're not just bricks with legs. They are supposed to be a bit more elegant than that. I mean, elegant is obviously, it's the word I would use. Whether they've succeeded in being elegant is entirely up to you, but the Castellans do not look like the Cataphrons. The Cataphron do not look like the Einstrider, and while the Einstrider and the Dune Crawler, you can see that they come from the same DNA, they don't massively resemble each other either. I mean, the difference between the Dune Crawler and the Castellans is pretty big. And that's before we even mention things like the Knights. Now, of course, this is an AdMech unit. Does it look anything like the Dune Crawler? Not really. It doesn't look anything like the Einstrider either. I would argue the Cataphrons, actually, in terms of the kind of curvature of the armour, it's probably got more shared with them than the other two. Even the Castellans, I guess, kind of matches a little bit more. But the thing it matches the most, in terms of the fact that it is so much more curved, it is so much more flowing in a way. Don't get me wrong, it's still a big beefy boy. It's not a subtle unit. It's not like you're going, oh, the artistry. No, it's still a big chunky boy, but the armour does not share that Imperium design. It does not share that angular design that is associated with the flyers and tanks of the Imperium as a whole. It doesn't look particularly like it belongs next to a Dune Crawler, but to be honest, it doesn't not match that. They kind of look like they belong together pretty well. And the thing is that with this particular model, it's not like it doesn't share any design cues with anything else. I mean, I realise the legs are different, but to me, those legs stretched out look like they would do a pretty good job of kind of being an analogue for the Iron Strider. Like, there's clearly an inspiration there. By the way, I think there is a front leg as well. It's just tucked under. I've seen a few people like, how would it even land? It's only got two legs. I think there is another one tucked under the nose of the aircraft, which, I mean, I hope there is. Otherwise, it's going to land like an actual bird, and that would, I don't know. I don't know whether that would look funny or bad. I'm not really sure which way that could go. Not everything in the AdMech is completely rounded for a start. I mean, I think that's one of the things that's worth pointing out. Yeah, this vehicle is very rounded compared to a lot of stuff, but it's not like there's nothing else on the AdMech stuff that has any sort of curvature to it. I mean, we already have things on the Dune Crawler where, you know, you have that side turret which is circular. You have the area where the gun mounts, which again is circular. It's not a big block with another block on it. There is a little more subtlety to it than that. And then when you look at things like the Cataphron and the Castellan, they both have, in the case of the Cataphron, it's not subtle. You know, it's not like smoothly done, but it's also not just a block on a block. Again, there is more to it than that. The Castellan is the best example of you know, something that they have that really does buck the trend in terms of Imperial vehicles, or Imperial robots, or Imperial walkers. They do have that added smoothness to them that you just don't have from anything else, which makes them stand out in AdMech as a whole. But I could easily see this being from the same era. Easily. I'd be put, if that was the explanation, if it was a case of, oh, I've been holding on to these since we you know, unleashed the Castellans, I would have no problem with that, because they are not a million miles from each other. And then we do have the Imperial Knight, a now mainstay of the Imperium as a whole, one of the most popular armies. People love these things, myself included. It's not blocky. It's not a brick on legs. It is so much more refined than that. And again, next to one of these, I don't feel like they wouldn't fit together side by side. Now, of course, we can't talk about all of this without talking about the Scorpius as well. The Scorpius is a weird one, but if anything, the introduction of this Scorpius is probably what has made me a bit more desensitized to the weirdness of the Archaeopter. See, again, the Scorpius does not match the locomotion used by anything else. You've got one tank with two legs, you've got a scout unit, you've got one tank with four legs, a scout unit with two legs, heavy infantry with tracks, and then you've got a transport/tank with, like, hovercraft technology. It is weird, but outside of the infantry, there hasn't been a unified approach to this yet anyway. It's all been slightly different. It's all been a slightly different approach. I mean, even when you look at, I'm classing the Cataphron and the Castellans along with the other vehicles, by the way, just because of essentially size, bulk, and just to demonstrate the fact that there are little differences across each part of the range. I mean, we can easily look at the infantry as well and find that too, but I'm kind of focusing on the heavier stuff. That is, again, it is boxy, but like the turret on the top is essentially just a Dune Crawler. It does have that boxy approach, but it doesn't just have that boxy approach. You've got these weird rounded edges, you've got these circular sections, you've got where the skirt for the hovercraft bit has that extra curve to it. I think, if anything, this had kind of highlighted to me just how weird the faction was as a whole. I mean, obviously, it's impossible to not know that it's weird, because it is. But this kind of highlighted it extra to me. And it's the fact that even the bits that are similar aren't the same. You know? The legs on the Dune Crawler are not in any way, like, they don't work the same as the ones on the Iron Strider. The legs on the Iron Strider are like, what is it called? Digigrade. They don't match the ones on the Castellans. The Castellans have got nothing to do with the Cataphron. And then you've got this, which is a hovercraft. At that point, it's like, sure, why not? I mean, nothing else matches. None of your other vehicles seem to be, or like heavy units seem to be following the same method of movement. And, including the Imperial Knight in that's yet another thing that moves differently again. It just feels like another weird unit to go with a big combination of weird units. And I mean, the thing is, it's not just about the heavier stuff. The Sicarian Ruststalkers don't really look like... I mean, if it wasn't for the colour scheme, they don't look particularly similar to the Electro Priests. The Electro Priests look pretty damn different from everything else in the range. And even just the change of head from the Ruststalkers to the Infiltrators. The Infiltrators, just by warrant of the kind of helmets they have and the antenna on the back, look so much more weirdly robotic and like, I don't know, high-tech than the Ruststalkers do. And they're part of the same kit. The poses might be the same, but the presence is not. And it's a similar thing with like the Ruststalkers have got these long backwards jointed legs. For the Rangers and the Vanguard, it's a different approach yet again. The Vanguard don't look like they match the Castellans. The Castellans don't look like they match the Infiltrators. The Infiltrators don't look like they match the Electro Priests in any way. I mean, the Cataphron and the Electro Priests actually, to me, look closer to each other than they do to other parts of the range. Now, a lot of that is, of course, down to the fact that originally it was Skitarii and AdMech. They were separate things, they were separate books, which was a stupid approach, but they corrected it, so it's fine. And they've been merged together. So you do have this difference in design, but that difference in design has been present since day one. It has been part of this since the very start. And whilst the difference is being highlighted with the introduction of things like the Scorpius and the Archaeopter, I don't think that they don't fit. I think they fit as much as anything else in that range, because that range in and of itself is a bit disjointed and scattered. But I'm not saying that as a negative thing. I'm not saying that that is bad. I'm saying that actually, as armies go, it's one of the things that makes them so much, so interesting. It's one of the things that makes them so different. It isn't just boxes. It isn't just people in armour. There is such a wide variety of units and approaches and styles just in that one force that adding to it, I don't think makes it any more kind of disjointed than it was. All it does to me is highlight the fact that these guys have an approach that no one else does. They have resources that no one else does. They have an attitude that no one else does. All this really does for me is just extra highlight it. Because it does fit in with some of the stuff they have, but it's completely at odds with other things that they have. But that was the case already anyway. Because some of this stuff just doesn't fit in with the rest of it. But it's not been a problem up until now. It's just been how they are. I don't think the introduction of this changes that. I think it just enhances it. So yeah, that's way longer than I meant it to be. Are you surprised? No, of course you're not. Anyway, let me know what you think of all of that in the comments down below. I realise there'll be plenty of you disagree with me. That's fine. As I say, it's just my opinion. I'd be interested to hear what you guys think as to whether you think it does work, whether it doesn't work, why you think it does or doesn't work. Yeah, let me know what you think in the comments down below. As I said, I've linked Macca's video in the description, so go ahead and give that a watch. And yeah, thank you very much for watching. Feel free to click all the things, Patreon, video, subscribe, all that stuff. And there's an affiliate link in the description for Element Games. If you click it, then you can buy stuff, and if you buy stuff, I get something for sending you that way, and 10% of whatever you spend will end up going to charity. So it's a thing you can do to support the channel, because you're going to buy that stuff anyway. I leave it up to you. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Toodaloo.